Good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Lee Jackson. I am with Bridgeline. It's an independent consultancy and practice focused on advising around retail-first technologies. We have the pleasure of working with many of the people on this panel and the portfolio owners that have retail holdings, whether that's grocery anchored or that's shopping centers, progressively more and more mixed use projects. And we've got a great mix of panelists with us today to kind of talk about what's happening in retail today. It's been widely reported the death of retail over the last decade or so. And I think it's pretty clear that retail is one of the most resilient asset classes in the marketplace. And there's been a lot of innovation happening and revisioning and evolution with respect to how retail centers operate today, whether it is a mixed use project, it is a grocery anchored center, or it is an enclosed shopping center or lifestyle center. There are multiple components to each retail center as an operator and lots of decisions that go into that process. But one of the unique components is you have the landlord, you have two customers. You have the visitor, the customer, the consumer who visits that asset, and you have the tenant who occupy that center. And both play a really meaningful role in accommodating that visitor. And technology is helping more and more on how that is executed. From an operational perspective, Ryan is a property management professional. Jay is a technology and innovation professional, and Tim is a marketing professional. So we have three really unique lenses that they're gonna kind of guide us through how they're working on things. Because of the role that I play, I'm gonna wear the shopping center lens and give some insights as we go through the discussion today. And the way we're gonna frame this is really taking you through that customer journey, both the tenant and the visitor to the center. So I think what we'll start with is introductions. And Jay, if you want to lead us off and just share a little bit about yourself, the organization you work with, and maybe if you want to highlight one or two major assets or projects that you have in the portfolio.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jay Richard-Yu with Jamestown. I'm our VP of Tech and Innovation based in our North American headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. Jamestown is a global real estate investment and management company designed to create spaces that foster innovations and build community. We have assets as of December 31st of 2025, just under management of under $14.1 billion in key markets in the US as well as in Europe. And some of our current and past projects include One Times Square and Chelsea Market in New York City, Industry City in Brooklyn, Avalon and Plot City Market in Atlanta, Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco, and Groot Handelsgebouw in Rotterdam, Netherlands. And so I'm really excited to be here with you all today and share a little bit of our use cases that we've supported our portfolio throughout the years.
Thanks, Jay. Ryan?
My name is Ryan Byler. I work for a company called Stoltz USA, which is a family-owned owner-operator of retail, multifamily, and industrial assets in the United States. We have about $5 billion worth of assets under management, so a little bit smaller than my counterparts here. My background has always been property management, particularly in the retail space, having worked for most of the major players, including a Blackstone subsidiary, as well as Tanger Outlets, if you're familiar with the outlet shopping class. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth and effectively grew up in this industry. So hopefully I'll be able to give you guys some insights as to how the various asset classes work and see how we go from there.
Cool. And are there any assets that stand out that we can kind of reference?
Yeah, so some of the big assets that I've worked on, there's the shops at Skyview in New York. It literally occupies a full city block of Queens. It's a very, very high asset, primarily a shopping base that doesn't speak English, right? So, a lot of, Mandarin, Cantonese speakers there. So that's one of the asset classes that I would look to. And the other ones is look at large scale outlet shopping facilities. If anyone's familiar with Long Island, a facility called Riverhead in New York, which Riverhead Shopping Center or Outlet Shopping Center is one of the largest and most productive outlet shopping centers in not just the country, but the world. So, I had the opportunity to work on some good asset classes that'll stand out and hopefully inform some of these opinions.
Great. Awesome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Murphy, Vice President of Marketing and Technology for Newmark Merrill Companies, privately owned shopping center owner, developer, manager based out of Los Angeles area, Southern California. We've got about 100 assets, all outdoor, grocery anchored open air shopping centers, about 13 million square feet, $3 billion in asset value. So I think a little bit smaller than you, Ryan. So I think I'm the small guy on the stage, but don't want to sell you short there. But about 2,000 tenants across California, primarily Southern California based, some assets in Colorado, Denver metro area, as well as the Chicagoland market as well. So, we're long-term holders for the most part, not a ton of volume, but we try to make a difference in those communities that we engage and do everything we can to help our properties, our merchants, the communities surrounding our customers. Like Lee was saying, with that multiple, diverse customer base. Don't know if there's be any properties of note, but special to us. I've got a great property in Anaheim near Disneyland. We've owned for 25 plus years, 400,000 square feet. Kind of some interesting opportunities over the years that we've taken a underperforming Ralph's and brought in a Hispanic grocer, Northgate market, and it's just seen our traffic and sales grow from there. We took a Kmart and demised it into a smaller format Target, Ross, Five Below, that just catapulted our traffic there. We've got a great property in Longmont, Colorado. We took a interior mall, raised it, and then built an outdoor shopping center in the Denver market. Beautiful shopping center, great common areas, a little bit different than our normal type. But we've had great success there. And then our newest asset would be a shopping center in Chicago that we just purchased, Lake Meadows, just south of McCormick Convention Center, about 200,000 square feet in the Bronzeville neighborhood. And super excited to get to know that community and serve our customers and our tenants there.
Great. Well, I'm actually the little guy. I have $0 billion. So don't worry, guys.
Someday.
You're all good. So from a retail dynamics perspective, the sector has seen occupancy just go up. In the grocery anchored space, it's 98+%. What that has led to, and in the shopping center space, it depends on the market, but you're looking at 5 to 4% vacancy rates. That's really, really strong to where it had been sort of pre-COVID. What's driving that is there's a lack of space in contrast to where we were. Construction starts basically halted in 2020, and there has been no new product coming to the market. There were some conversions that were happening and converting retail space into different use types, which reduced the total inventory. And it's created really a dynamic where there is high demand. And the landlord's ability to generate revenue is typically based on driving rents. And when there's less space to rent, you then have to change to operating in a much more dynamic way and optimal way. So I think thinking about that, that's really driven some of the technology adoption in these assets, which is great. So before we dive in, I just want to quickly ask the audience, just generally, what is the makeup of the group? So if you're in the operation side or you're a landlord, property manager, can you just throw your hand up just to get an example? Okay, good mix. And if you're a solution provider, tech provider, servicing the business, lots of you. And then just general consultant. Okay, cool, good mix. That's great. You guys got a good feel for the room? All right, let's dive in. So we're gonna start out with where the customer journey starts, and that starts before they actually visit the asset today because of technology. It typically starts on your mobile device. It starts from the influence that comes forward. And maybe Tim, I'll start with yourself because you've got both the visitor and the tenant. You're doing visitor marketing and you're doing tenant marketing to highlight the spaces that you do have available at the asset. Can you talk about some of the initiatives and some of the programs that you guys are working on to influence both of those things?
Yeah, I think it starts with, we're super hands-on with our properties, our tenants, our customers. It starts with our on-site property management team. They're in constant communication with our tenants. They're trying to understand, obviously the maintenance side of what's going on, but it's also the understanding of helping them understand who their customer is, where it's coming from, to support our marketing team. So our operations and marketing teams work very closely hand in hand. We've got a lot of communication that goes both ways. We meet quarterly with our merchants and put all of our team together, from our CEO down to operations, marketing, leasing, putting our teams together to give updates to our tenants, to share operational updates, leasing updates, marketing updates, upcoming events, all of that stuff, which helps really give us a better understanding of what makes those tenants tick, and then, program around that. And then, for the marketing side, it's a hands-on approach. It's trying to understand the community, trying to understand where our customers are coming from, how that works for those individual tenants. Use a lot of data from Placer, as I'm sure pretty ubiquitous for most landlords and operators. Happy to say we were one of the first customers that started using it in 2017, and it's been really interesting to see the evolution. And, I think it's table stakes for everybody right now. You have to understand what's going on at your shopping center. I think where we provide value for the merchants is really trying to have a hands-on approach of sharing competition information, because I don't think they see that insight as much. And the ones that actually can take the time to look at it and start to understand it, I think there's a ton of value there in understanding, where they rank, where their traffic is, some sales comparisons to a certain subset. But then, where Placer's going with some customized reports, some, on-demand stuff, their ability to push updated reports to not only us as well as our, share some of that tenant information, I think has been great. I've been able to see some of the next steps for what Placer's doing from a natural language ability to query and analyze data. And I think what they're leaning towards is pretty phenomenal, and excited to kind of see that come to market soon. But then it's the programming for the events. It's understanding what's going to drive the customers to those tenants, and then try that programming, and then iterate from there.
By the way, I just want to poll the room. How many people have had, I asked this question last year on the panel, but how many people have had a tenant come to the table in a lease negotiation with Placer data in their pocket? One?
Only one.
It's starting to become more ubiquitous that they're coming to the table when they're trying to negotiate a deal with the Placer data in their pocket, saying, well, I got this other option down the street, and here's the Placer data on that one. So I was just curious to see if there's been more evolution of tenants using it from previous years or not.
I mean, Placer's got a whole site selection tool that's custom for those tenants, right? To be able to do the same thing as I'm looking at shopping centers to buy. They're looking at locations to open their next business. So yeah, super interesting.
It's definitely become commoditized, like from a pre-discovery to learn about an asset before you lease as a tenant, to leverage mobility data and other data sources that you are able to understand what's the traffic, what is the performance of the tenants at the asset. And that's interesting because now you've got a landlord and a tenant staring at each other, negotiating with basically the same information, right? Which can make it challenging. I think we get challenged quite frequently to help landlords understand how they can tell a different story, a more quantified or like direct story. Are any of you doing anything to secure your own proprietary information about your assets so that you can point to that and compete with that data?
I think for us, we've spent a lot of time with our data and research team building Power BI dashboards, really taking in different sources, Placer, of course, and looking at comps and all of our data sources as well as historicals within our company, and building a really phenomenal internal dashboard that our leasing team could be armed to be able to go out to market and have these conversations with the right tenants for each of our assets. So I think we've taken that extra step of really being more intentional about what's important from a data perspective, but also what's important for us to chase and what's the best fit for each of our assets. And I think for us, it's really being more mindful and about that curation, because that's where it starts with leasing and merchandising. The center is having that right mix of the tenants.
Yeah. What I've seen is there's a lot of reporting that happens. I think sales reporting is pretty common in the retail ecosystem, and Placer's data and other users, like we keep referencing Placer, but anybody in the mobility data or the sales projections side of things, it is a projection. So if you do have that hard data and you can organize it and be able to access it quickly, you can certainly have the actual information to reference, which is super helpful. From a visitor perspective, before they arrive, a couple of other tools that we've seen in the market are things around product discovery, the ability to help highlight your tenants, running programs around the marketability of your assets, which are your tenants, or the merchandising that takes place. A lot in the social media space, there's a lot of social media collaboration platforms out in the market now, which will allow landlords, developers, marketing teams to work with micro-influencers in the market, vet them, understand who their follower is, the geography they work in, and securitize the commissioning or the costs of those projects. That's tough because there's a lot of affiliations that individual content creators might have that are high risk to institutional owners. But we're seeing platforms come in place to do pre-qualification on those individuals, which I find really interesting. And then the big one that everyone's going to hear, it's going to be all conference the next years, but AI, right? And SEO was big and discoverability through SEO was big, but now it's all about AEO and GEO and finding ways. Are any of you guys doing anything in those sort of three things today? Jay, maybe I'll point to you.
Yeah, within our tech and innovation group, we have a data transformation team. We spent the past couple of years building our own OpenAI instance called ChatJT for the organization. But we also come to find out, just because of the acceleration of AI, that a lot of our team members are looking at third-party tools outside of our four walls, like Claude. Of course, Anthropic is phenomenal right now. And we're actually building on an enterprise system that actually works across the pond to our EU colleagues from a GDPR perspective. But within our own ChatJT instance, we've also built lease abstraction, document analyzer, charts, presentations, and so forth. But we've also spent the time talking to vendors out there in the marketplace, right? Trying to get a feel of, what tools they have and what we're missing from our toolbox, and really having a dialogue, because this stuff is ever evolving. It's the wild, wild west, just like EV is. And so really trying to harness, these experts in the field and understand what's best for our organization. And governance is also a huge policy for us, because we are a fiduciary as well. And trying to navigate through this is very cumbersome, but we're also at the same time building our data warehouse. I think from a real estate perspective, right, we tend to be the last to adopt new technology, and we have spreadsheets and notes and deals all over the place, right? So it's important to funnel all this into one central space. And so we partnered, for example, with Cherry to build a data warehouse first, to have clean data in, garbage in, garbage out, and build that simultaneously on the AI side, but also working collaboratively across the org to understand, how AI is impacting each vertical of our business. So there's a lot of conversations with our leadership teams and with compliance and legal, as well as internally with the org and externally with vendors.
Great. Well, why don't we move to the next phase of the customer journey, which is arrival and parking. I'm going to just go to you again, Jay, because I know you've got some really meaningful parking initiatives that we'll let you share a little bit about.
Yeah, so as you all know, when you arrive at a shopping center, parking is your first impression, right? And then parking is your last impression. So across our portfolio, it's about the intent in our playbook, to make parking a seamless, frictionless experience for not only our guests, but our tenants at the same time. So we come in with a layered approach to, really change and reimagine the parking experience. Especially, you wouldn't believe how much a coat of paint would really set the tone of an experience when you drive down to a dingy 4-level underground parking garage, right? And we've also integrated technology. There's great players in the market space like Metropolis and Vend Parking that we've collaborated with to make that parking experience seamless, especially for our high traffic centers. The last thing you want, especially when you exit the center, if you're there for dinner or a movie or a special event, you don't want to sit in traffic, right? So it's really understanding, the market, the demands, looking at your data, of course, of like how many people are entering and exiting, recalibrating as you go. And for us, it's really identifying the right partners. We also have parking in-house too, that we operate valet, for instance, at our majority of our Atlanta assets. And it's all about the hospitality as well. So when you valet your vehicle, whether it's at Ponce or Avalon or Colony Square in Atlanta, they're going to put in a note as well as a branded water bottle in your car to just say thank you for, spending time at our center, right? And I think that does a lot. It's about, being hospitable and going that extra mile. And I think that's sort of a way to change it up and also change that perception of going to a center, unlike other competitors where it's just, okay, I'm just going to drop off my car. But, it's really hospitality driven and again, going that extra mile for us.
Sure. Ryan, how's parking arrival sort of impact you in your role? What have you seen sort of change over the last decade?
It's so critical. I cannot tell you number one complaint. First of all, I'm assuming everyone in the room has a really, really tight control over their Google presence online. If you don't, you've missed the boat, okay? So my property managers, every single one of them is what's called a Google Guide, and they're verifying our tenants, hours and making sure they're correct on Google and doing all those things. So if you haven't started, that's a great place to start from the start of the journey, okay? Mm-hmm. But as you extend down this idea of making the arrival something that, I don't want to say is fun, but it just needs to be seamless. You don't want them to think about pulling in or out of your shopping center, right? So as you're doing this analysis on the parking, is there enough parking? Is there enough ADA parking? Is the ADA parking appropriately placed? And you're right, on a garage, I have more open lots. I do have a few garages too, but being well lit at night is the number one presence that you can have. And if you don't even have the parking lot recently like seal coated, as long as you've got bright stripes and bright lights, a lot of the other parking lot issues can kind of go by the wayside, right? So we focus on making sure that people can get in, get out very easily. Where we have garages, we use, touch-free partners like Metropolis, right? So I can drive in any Metropolis garage now, it reads my license plate and I'm in and out, and it goes to I get notified, my receipt goes right to my expense report, all those types of things. So finding the right partners is super critical, and then having a very, very keen eye. And we're on the properties so much that there's so many things that we miss day in, day out. And so managing that Google presence, as soon as you get a Google review or the parking here sucks, well, you better be looking into why someone has that impression, because I guarantee you it's probably someone who's arriving at the busiest time of your operation. And if you're like us, we have major, tenant anchors that are very important to us. Companies like Whole Foods and, these grocers that they have great data too. So if anyone has a Publix in one of their facilities, Publix will damn well tell you when your parking lot's not up to snuff, okay? You're gonna get about 20 emails from the Publix facilities team letting you know. And by the way, we've built very close relationships with our tenant operators. And that's the other part of it, is you need to build the relationship with the tenants, because they're gonna be the ones that tell you how these things are functioning and what the problems are at the center. I'm not sure about anyone else on the stage. My property managers cannot be at a facility 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It just don't have the dollars to do that. Yeah. So you rely on
locations in their portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. We rely on our tenant partners. So listen to them and the feedback that they're giving you. And I would say that's probably my number one takeaway, is just listen to your tenants. I know some of them can be a real pain sometimes, but we really do value them. Yeah. And trust me, if they're being a pain to you, it's because something's being painful to them.
So sticking with the technology perspective, is anything happening in parking on the grocery side, guys, Tim or Ryan, with your sites? I think it's at its infancy, but I've got a couple of examples.
So there are some services, where people can rent other people's cars and things like that. So like Zipcar and stuff.
So revenue generation?
Yes, we've toyed with the ideas of making, if we have a facility that's really easy to access, finding ways to monetize the parking. Yeah. And it's essentially an additional amenity to our property, right?
So underutilized parking to generate revenue. Yeah. I've seen, I think Neighbors one for storage. Mm-hmm. I've seen drone nesting, which is interesting if anybody has surplus lands, but preparing for drone delivery. Yep. That's happening in Texas right now, which is really interesting.
I can't say the name of the company, but I'm actively negotiating for multiple of my industrial sites. We have big open places of land, right? And they'll come in, they'll lease pour a concrete pad. They don't actually do the deliveries out of there, but this is just where the drones sit at night and go and charge and come back and land and charge. And so if you've got a little bit of power and a little bit of open space, there's a lot of opportunities to monetize some of the parking or extra land you have.
It's similar to EV charging as well. If you've got a center that has multiple level 2 and level 3 charging, autonomous vehicles, as you may know, are growing by the moment. It's a pretty wild era right now, but sleeper stations, similar to what you mentioned, Lee, is taking off, and that could be a great ancillary generator for assets that have those spaces available for Waymos and lifts, et cetera.
Yep. Tim, you looked like you were
trying to push echo a lot of the same things, right? From a safety perspective, safety, and if the customer doesn't feel safe because the property's not well lit, we're in some areas that the surrounding neighborhoods are not great. But when your property is clean and well lit and the customer feels safe, it goes a long way. One of the ways that we can evaluate that is through online reviews, right? It's not only the tenants we have a lot of tenants who love to tell us when there's something wrong, which, like you said, is great. and frustrating at the same time. But utilizing online services that, I'm tracking not only the entity for the property, but all of my customers, because inevitably something that's on the landlord side is going to be a review that's on the tenant side. And I would never see that if I wasn't not only managing my shopping center reviews, but also the reviews for my tenants, and then being able to understand pain points and what's going on. And then I was just going to say signage, for, EV, things like that as a electric vehicle owner drives me nuts when I can't figure out where the stations are. So, finding ways to make that signage intuitive, that not only the EV, but the stores, making that part of the environment that the customer can figure out where they're going quickly and easily is huge.
Yep. A couple other things I've seen on the ancillary revenue side, premium parking programs are growing, specifically at high demand assets and luxury assets, shopping centers, for convenience. Even if the lot is fairly empty, there are people in the market that are willing to pay a premium for premium parking. There is a movement and leveraging technology for validation and registration. You mentioned data. I do see a future where if you want to park in a privately held retail asset, you will have to register your vehicle. I do think that's coming. I think that's for security purposes. I think it's for data and the ability to communicate. And there's a real channel there because it is your best point of entry to connect with the customer. And there are groups that are focusing on that. There's great tech to validate that parking. So making it paid if you don't use the premise, but if you do, proof of purchase tech and the ability to sync that with purchase data. That's really interesting. You mentioned autonomous orchestrations becoming a challenge there, especially where there's events that are in close proximity and you have 60 Waymos that show up because there is an event taking place. That's a logistical nightmare. There's nobody in the car you're honking at when you're trying to move your vehicle. So as a landlord or a property manager going forward, you're going to need to have some form of layer to orchestrate that. And that's really interesting. And I think there is a future in commerce there as well. I think soon enough, the retailers will be selling product and sending it in an unpersoned vehicle to deliver to people's homes. So those are a couple of other parking components.
I would say cameras too, right? I've got cameras that are not only security based, but traffic based. I'm counting cars coming in, but there's also the LPR side, license plate recognition, and starting to build dashboards that I can see. It's always been difficult for us to figure out ROI on an event that we spend money, drive people to the parking lot. We're starting to look at opportunities to look at those LPR to see, we see a license plate, 30 days before the event, what's the percentage of people that come during that event? And then what's our bounce back, 1, 2, 3, 6 months afterwards? If we have that LPR, it's not a perfect science. Obviously there's multiple cars, households, things like that. But I'm starting to use license plates to understand kind of marketing bounce back for our events as well.
There's an incredibly innovative developer in the crowd here today who uses LPR for some stuff to measure vehicle make and model to help dictate maybe the amount of EV chargers they might need, or work with teams to identify perhaps what automaker might want to tenant the space in the future. And that's a really good use of that technology as well.
I want to add one other thing on this parking thing before we move on, because I feel like for those of us in retail, we don't talk about this enough, but so many online orders are fulfilled from our retail stores. Like Target fulfills 90% of its online orders directly from the store. Most of these shopping centers, because there's been no new supply, were not built around that model. So they're set up to accommodate cars coming on site, but not necessarily, these big trucks and things and easy access in and out for deliveries, right? So one of the other big things that we're focusing on, especially when you're talking to tenants, is that these locations that we have are super convenient for you to fulfill online ordering. That's something that we need to be having the better conversation about, and we need to be designing our shopping centers around, especially as we rework parking lots and find these vendor partners. Because if we're not setting up our retail facilities to be the last mile, logistics center, we're again missing the boat. So that's something that we're heavily focused on, is how do we really facilitate our lots and run them in a way that allows for online order fulfillment, because they're all coming out of our properties anyway.
And the amount of suppliers that are servicing that market just continue to increase, right? When you roll in autonomous, you roll in drone, you roll in third-party delivery companies, Instacarts, you name it. And then you have the traditional logistics providers that are doing package courier pickups.
Yep.
That's a lot of people at a lot of
It's interesting to see how much of your traffic, when you pull the data, is like the same repeat person doing deliveries in and out of it for like DoorDash or something. You're like, why has this person been here like 30 times? Well, it's because you've got a really, really popular restaurant. And by the way, that's useful intelligence for us to have, and we're going to renewal, right? So again, a lot of these things that we think about operationally are really informing our strategic decisions around leasing and marketing.
Yeah, I want to use that as a good segue to like placemaking, and I'm going to start with merchandising of tenants, because if I look 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was very consistent. It was like Me Too retailers, hard goods, lots of clothing options, and groceries have always been a little bit different. There's been services in that space, but now it's food and beverage, it's entertainment, it's services, it's fitness, it's things that people need. It's like more daily needs driven. How is technology, one, helping on that side? I think looking at sales and data and information is certainly one. We maybe touched on it a little bit before, but how are you guys supporting the business through those merchandising decisions to kind of get to that right mix, if you will? Anyone want to jump on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in and share our use case with one of our crown jewels, Avalon in Alpharetta, Georgia. It's a 2.5 million square foot outdoor lifestyle center, and grateful to our leasing team and additional teams like property management, asset management, to really identify, and again, we're a data-driven company, to really understand our sales, right, and our current tenant mix and placer data and all these combinations of tools that we have in our toolbox, and really make intentional decisions on how we curate the collection of tenants at our center. We look at our space planning and our green spaces and how we activate with marketing and parking, of course, and valet and our concierge program. All of that all factors into the tenants that we bring and how successful this center is. I mean, we were one of the centers to bring the first Bowden retailer to the U.S., women's and children's apparel out of London. We have a title sponsorship with the local Mercedes-Benz, and from that partnership through our ancillary team, we brought in our first high-performance charging hub through M&A to Mercedes-Benz USA, first to market for a mixed use in Georgia. So when you have some of these combinations and the tenant mix, it really sets us up for success to really be intentional about how we're serving our guests. And for us, it's meeting where the visitor needs and taking them away from their screen. And we are very careful and strategic of how we place each of our tenants across our boulevard and through the sides of our property, and how they're interactive with different spaces across the assets. So it's really taking that step back and listening to the feedback and looking into the data and creating this playbook that we're working with our leasing teams, again, to be able to find the right fits with the right tenants in this particular asset. And like we do at all our assets, but that's a really great example of how we've been successful. And I encourage, if you all get a chance to visit Atlanta, please visit Avalon. It's an amazing site.
It is. I think about retail as like the one sort of true vertical, and it's something that's the catalyst to everything in the community. And I know this is a multifamily heavy conference. I don't know if any of the multifamily operators have come in here, but often the thing that people talk about at the site is that coffee shop or that retailer or that fitness concept or that restaurant or whatever it may be. So it's such an important component of the site, and it's what retail does super well. From a development perspective, I think there's probably about 10% of every portfolio from a retail holdings perspective that is doing some form of integration of vertical deliveries. So that's apartments, condos, education tech, education as a service, hotels, hospitality, a little bit of office, and it plays to that like live, work, play. That's the sort of the ethos of Jamestown. You guys are ahead of your time in that space. Do you guys have any projects where you're exploring or introducing those kind of integrations, guys?
So early exploration, definitely a couple sites where we're looking at hospitality in the middle of the shopping center, opportunities to go vertical. It's rare for us to have office, but when we do, we've got the education component there, and really just trying to as we look at new shopping centers to see if there's opportunities to make space to allow opportunities later. But definitely something we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a lot of assets that are like within like downtown in the city. So I end up with a lot of office and apartment above and my retail on the lower first floors. And so, yeah, we're looking at ways to make those things more convenient for our office tenants up above. So if I can bring a fitness use in directly below a major office, I don't have to build a fitness center in there or maintain it, and I can just negotiate a small fee. That's super, super helpful because fitness equipment's really expensive to put into an office facility. It costs a lot when we lease it. And the other thing that I always tell people about is I've had a few leasing brokers that have called and yelled at me because they were really upset that I chose one deal over a different deal. And we chose a deal that wasn't the best financially. It still met our metrics that we needed it to meet, but we didn't feel that this other use was going to really enhance the shopping center's appeal overall to the community, right? And it takes a lot of guts to go to your senior leadership and say, I don't think that we should do this deal. I understand it's a little bit better financially, but it doesn't lead to the ethos of what we're trying to accomplish here at shopping centers. So you have to have the courage to be able to stand up for the deal that you believe in and what's best for the property. And I can't, as we vertically integrate, for sure, that's a bigger conversation, right? Yeah. We're talking about how this deal lends to the office space or the multifamily that we have, because I operate in the multifamily space as well. So we're looking at what all of those things are and how they can all factor together to kind of create a synergistic effect, which I hate that word because it sounds like consultant speak. But at the same time, there really is some merit to the idea that you're going to get, 1 + 1 = 2.5 rather than 2. So.
Yeah. I'm going to jump back to the visitor component of being an operator. And we've parked our car, we've gotten out, we've arrived on site. What are some of the technology solutions that you're using or things that technology is supporting to make that a pleasant experience, to track it, to understand it, and meet sort of the expectations of the customer? You mentioned art and you mentioned like the placemaking, green spaces, things of that nature. What about like digital directories, wayfinding? Are you doing anything else that's sort of noteworthy at the assets, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. From a wayfinding perspective, is also an ancillary perspective. We partnered with RopeIQ for interactive kiosks across several of our projects across the portfolio. When you arrive to the assets, they're strategically placed around the property where you can interact on both sides. There's camera technology to also keep track of some data there, but also there's an experience there for the guests to create their own little postcard. And so there's some marketing there that kind of ties it back to the brand and creates that experience and contributes to dwell time, but also informs them, if they're trying to get from point A to point B, they can either look at the map itself or also scan the QR code feature to get from there to their destination. And we also have seen a huge challenge again, with underground parking decks, where when you enable your location on your mobile device, you can scan that QR code through that technology and be able to safely navigate from that point A to point B. So it's been very cumbersome at some of our assets, especially with underground parking, to visit an office tenant, whether it's a lawyer or a dentist or a healthcare provider. And we've cracked the code in terms of working with the right vendor partners to be able to provide that feature where it creates that seamless experience to navigate an asset. And then, we also have a great concierge team to include that sort of physical human touch as well at some of our assets, and then ambassadors like at Chelsea Market in New York to be able to have that interaction with our guests to show them where to go, explain to them if there's a pop-up or an opportunity happening on the site as well. So any asset, we also have screens, obviously, as an ancillary component there to drive additional revenue back to the landlord and operator there. So it's been a very lucrative streamline for us when it comes to advertising, whether it is on those kiosks or to a parking deck panel or traditional billboards.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things I think that's important to recognize is you don't necessarily have to have, and by the way, I love the digital directories. I've done them in the past as well. But especially with things like underground parking, you don't necessarily need to be thinking about technology in the way of how can I deploy new technology to make this, work better, make this more convenient for the customer. One of the things that we kind of took a step back about and thought about was, let's think about this more about how the customer is using technology is now in their pocket, right? And how we make that as powerful as possible for them. That makes our transactions more clean and easy. So one of the things that we talked about was, okay, you're down in an underground parking deck because we've got a couple of those. People need to know where they're going, how to get around. And so, yeah, we can put signage up, and, parking garage signage always looks awful. I don't know why. But one of the things that we said was, well, maybe the best way to help our consumers is making sure that they absolutely have 100% great cell signal here, right? So we went to the major carriers and said, look, we're not going to charge you guys for this, because a lot of those we were charging for small cell sites on our properties, right? Come put a small cell site on. Give me like $1,000, a month in extra rent. Well, is that really worth it? Or is it better just to have them come in and really wire up that underground parking garage so that your customer never loses signal while they're there? And look, this is going to be me being, I'm not going to say sexist, but as a father of 2 young girls, and I have a wife at home, their ability to be in touch and have that phone connect when they're in an underground parking garage, which is one of the most isolated places they can be, is very important, right? Yeah. So don't just think about it in terms of, okay, we have to put this in. Think about your customer and how they want to interact. And there may be old technology that you can deploy and just make a couple phone calls and make that experience more seamless for them.
You just triggered a very easy segue as well here, Ryan. On the placemaking side, I think this has probably been one of the biggest focuses for everyone is security. And retail organized crime has been booming. There's lots of optics to that in the media. And if something happens on premise at one of your assets, it influences how people feel about that asset. So I know you are all doing things around security, but maybe Tim, I'll start with you around this because I know you've got some initiatives. What are you doing to make sure that your assets have the most secure space? You mentioned lighting already, Ryan, but what are some of the technology integrations that you're doing to support those services?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cameras as the evolution, right? I think back when I first started, it was, let's put up some cameras, and as long as, somebody can see it on a screen, great, right? And then it's all about how do you access that? Is it on site? Is it in the cloud? So being able to get that information, then it transpired for us to be able to kind of combine the security side to the analytics side. So I looked at somebody like Springboard to be able to give me the data that I want, which, gives me those layers of data that we keep talking about to understand what's going on at our property. It's been a nice kind of supplement to the Placer algorithm. I'm blanking on the word I'm trying to think of, but they give that estimation for traffic. So then I've got the cameras layered on for the one-to-one traffic that's going into the stores, the cars coming in, and then trying to, combine those. And then, security after mortgage, after insurance, it's probably our single next biggest line item, right? And, it's always security is never in the right place when you need it, right? So we've started looking at additional opportunities for offsite monitoring of cameras, where we can shift some of that burden to make sure we understand what's going on at our property, to offsite individuals that can then, alert us when there's an issue, hopefully reach out to police when there's activities going on. We've had cars literally drive through the front of our stores for smash and grabs, and it is just crazy to think how fast those people can get in and out. And if you don't have overnight security, if you do, your security guards on the other side of the shopping center, having something that alerts, that triggers a response, that goes through the protocol, alerts police, alerts our on-site team, alerts our property management team. That's been super beneficial to us. We've seen tremendous savings in security. We've upped our level of being able to be more proactive and take care of our customers. And then it's just trying to find that right balance of on-site people, the off-site monitoring, and then what's really great is their ability to then detail those reports, right? That company can then send me a 2-minute clipped video of the 6 different views of a car coming in and then parking and then the person getting out and what they do, as well as the daily logs of activities of, hey, we saw this spray painting and it's, this car was attached to this activity. That reporting has really upped our ability to take care of our shopping centers better.
This is where I promised I wasn't going to endorse a specific solution, and I'm going to do it by name, but this is where artificial intelligence and the cameras can really, really help you. So I'm going to talk about one problem that I think all of the owner-operators in here have had, which is you get a slip and fall incident on your property and you get sued 9 months later, right?
Yep.
There's no footage of it happening because your system can't record all that footage and keep it back, and you're not going to go back through, right?
Yep.
So there are now AI solution providers that are training the AI in their cameras to look for slip and falls and to automatically record them and download them so that you have that. So when I get sued 9 months later, because they know that they don't expect me to have security camera footage of it, now I have it. And screw you, I'm going to win, take your lawsuit out, right? So,
or I'm going to settle really quick. If you're right.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where I think that, especially around security, is building AI into your cameras and your analytics is probably one of the lowest hanging pieces of fruit, because if I can drive my claims down, everyone knows, anyone here who's did their budgets last year knows that we all got slammed with insurance premiums going through the roof this last year. So we're looking at anything we can do to try and drive those premiums down. And I can tell you, if you can get rid of those slip and fall incidents, all those little things add up to a big way of being able to better negotiate your premiums as well.
Yeah. I think the other security piece that is a best practice is certainly informing tenants and the tenant communication side of things. Are y'all doing anything or seen anything in the market that's helping you with that side?
I think for us, and I agree with my panelists with the technology, but I think relationship building is also key as a part of the strategy. We have security consultants, and we train our security teams and build the relationships with local law enforcement. And at a majority of our sites too, we partnered with Flock Safety, which is an Atlanta-based company that reads LPRs, and we have those strategically placed at the exits of our shopping centers that capture that, and that has helped in numerous of incidences that had happened across certain aspects of our portfolio. But at any rate, it's really building that relationship and having that constant flow of communication and leveraging the technology to be able to quickly inform one another when an incident occurs. And so that's been a really great part of our strategy there, just continuously building on that relationship, because we know security teams, it's a revolving door, right? Yeah. And so you constantly have to keep training and keeping everyone on the same page. And so if you have this in your consultants and relationships with not only local law enforcement, but the local central improvement district or neighborhood planning association, really building those relationships to really create that safe environment for your patrons and your tenants and the overall community.
Yeah. So what about this situation? Active protest gets out of hand. Everybody's looting in the area and coming towards your center. How do you inform people rapidly? Is there tech that you use to do that?
There's a guy smiling in the audience because he knows I have a contract with him to do exactly that.
Right there.
Yeah.
That's good. There you go.
No. So again, I've seen so many people, and again, I keep talking about you're missing the boat, but if you're using an email list to communicate to your tenants on the fly, you've missed it. It's gone. Yeah. And one of the reasons I love some of the solutions we've used is, for retail, it has to contact the store directly. It cannot just contact the manager on their mobile device, because you have no idea if they're actually there that day.
Even the employee, right?
Right. So what we've made we focus on making the technology, the notification available to as many employees as that retailer has, so that they all can be informed. But in addition, it's always going to call their corporate office, and it's always going to call the store to make sure that they notified. So whoever picks up the phone at that store is going to hear the message. Now, one of the problems we're running into is a bunch of our retailers now using AI to field the calls that come into the stores. And so you get this automated message playing to the AI, and it's like, so I think that's a piece that we haven't solved yet and we need to work through. But you have to be able to get those messages out really, really quick and on the fly. And I talk about something with my team that they're so sick of hearing me talk about, which is what I called it an old employer and called my new employer Project Starbucks, which is, I want my property managers to do every single thing that they did in the office while sitting at a Starbucks on site. Okay. And what that means is, that does not, by the way, mean taking their laptop out and logging into the Wi-Fi. It means a device on their phone or a device on their iPad that allows them to do every single thing they need to with the tenant, including updating that emergency contact information while they're standing in the store talking to them. They pull up their iPad, they update the information, it's good to go, we're done. Because I cannot tell you how many times human error or forgetting to put that information or update that information has been a reason why someone didn't get contacted in an emergency. So again, we really focus on making things as frictionless as possible for the tenants, for the property managers, and for the shoppers as well.
Totally. We're motoring through a bunch of stuff here. There's only 10 minutes left. I want to give a chance to the audience to grab some questions. So before we do that, I'm going to close with maybe something more operationally focused, but I know you all play a role at your organizations in this. But on the physical facility management side, and the fact that you're high occupancy right now, you're trying to drive value into the projects, and there's been a movement around ESG and environmental good, environmental for business purposes and for making your site more attractive to the visitor and promoting the great initiatives that you do. Can you just share maybe one or two of the green initiatives that have been impactful to the business? Because I know it's happening across retail. It's impacting the efficiency of your buildings. It's impacting the perspective or the way that the consumer views you as an operator. But maybe Jay, if you want to start, we'll go down the line and then we'll pass it to the audience if they've got any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jamestown does have a sustainability arm, and we've had a lot of great success recently for our West Coast assets, specifically in the Bay Area of California, where we worked with Wonder Capital, for instance, for solar. And we've seen tremendous savings in this program, and we're excited to take this on the road for the East Coast of our portfolio and unpack and uncover opportunities in deregulated markets. And so solar has been a great initiative for the team, and we're generating a lot of savings and rebates and so forth in that market. And we're excited and yet curious and working with the right consultants to discuss opportunities to expand that program and really utilities, right? So we've seen a lot of opportunities where we've checked the boxes on like lighting, for instance, transitioning traditional lighting to LED, which is low-hanging fruit for a lot of property management teams to check that box. But there's more that we can uncover, especially in those deregulated markets, with setting our own rates and uncovering opportunities as well, and drilling down into water and waste and et cetera. So there's a lot to do. We have this huge goal of being net zero by 2050, but we're really making great headway, especially on the utility side. And as we segue to the other categories, but I'd love to share, solar has been a great opportunity for the portfolio.
Great, Ryan.
Probably one of the biggest things that we're looking at, we do look at solar and a few other things, but with on-peak and off-peak demand on electricity, we're looking at a lot of on-site power storage now, because we want to be able to get the power from the grid at the lower rate, and then we turn around and feed that back to the tenants at a rate that is actually a delta between what they would pay for peak rates versus what we're paying. So in other words, I'm going to get as much power from the power company as I can at their lowest rate, and then I'm going to turn around and sell it back to my tenants during peak times for cheaper than what they can get it from the grid, right? So it's actually saving us money. Now, that maybe not doesn't qualify as ESG maybe, because it's, I realize that I'm not really saving any energy, but at the same time, I'm putting less demand on the grid during peak time. So hopefully that counts as an ESG initiative. But for us, it's a way of, finding one of these additional ways to generate revenue.
It's all about framing, right? I think you're also doing asset resilience. It's risk mitigation. You're able to power your asset in the event of energy catastrophic event. So let's reframe it for you.
There we go. I like that better.
Tim,
a lot of similar, between solar, between LED lighting, between electric vehicle charging, like we've talked about, and then to a lesser extent, just, on-site materials, right? Everything from trash cans to benches, trying to find durables, sustainable materials for shade, things like that. Just being so much more mindful in the pieces that we bring that will look good, will last, and obviously be sustainable.
Yeah, I think in this space, we're just seeing so much innovation happening in the guts of the building, whether it's boiler tech, it's HVAC tech, it's solar tech, and it's really the systems that operate. They're just operating much more effectively and efficiently. And those are some pretty big lines that both impact the tenant and any common space that you guys pay for. So I think with that, we've probably got about 5 or 10 minutes. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to ask the panelists some questions, bring up a topic that we haven't had? You want to just share your name and who you're with, and then ask away?
Microphone.
We might have a microphone coming your way as well.
Hey guys, great job on the panel today. My name is Josh Garcia. I'm with Boingo. Ryan, you mentioned the importance of cell coverage in underground parking for safety and security. But as retailers adopt more mobile-driven experiences through customers' phones, how important do you see strong cellular coverage inside the shopping spaces becoming? And are owners also starting to view it as essential infrastructure like Wi-Fi and power?
Yes, it's a really good question. So I would actually tell you we're actually focused more on the cellular coverage than we are even deploying Wi-Fi, because I don't want someone to have to, again, I don't want them to have to click more than anything on their phone to be connected, right? So my marketing teams would tell you that they really want everyone logged onto the Wi-Fi so they can push things to their phones, and those types of, all that back-end marketing. But really what we're focused on is making sure that it's absolutely there. And so there's not a lot of construction going on, but anytime I'm doing a redevelopment, if you think I'm not like making sure that there's complete cell coverage in every single one of my spaces, like we're running additional lines that have nothing run through them, right? They're just big empty conduits running underneath all of our stores. Why? Because we know we're going to have to pull infrastructure at some point for them. We just don't know what that infrastructure is going to be. And I don't really want to have to hassle with digging up and trenching lines and for something like that. So I think one of the big things we're just focusing on is I'm not smart enough to figure out what's coming 10 years down the road or what new piece of technology is really going to be the next big thing in retail. There are a lot of people smarter than me, and many of them are these vendors here that are trying to do that. So what I'm focused on is making sure my assets from an infrastructure standpoint, because I understand infrastructure, are set up and ready to go. And that includes the cell coverage. Yes, it usually does include Wi-Fi, but I'm not making it a huge point. And then, there's going to be other technologies that are coming out that, we have no idea what they're going to be. There was a time when we were pushing, using old radio RF signals to like communicate with our traffic counters and things like that. So we don't know what those are going to look like, but we're trying to make sure we put a lot of money in the infrastructure. Well, not a lot of money, but build the infrastructure in a way that's going to support it.
I would say I have some legacy Wi-Fi systems that we put in pre-COVID. That's all coming into life right now. We've got some decisions of it's a lot cheaper than when it used to be to totally put Wi-Fi across my outdoor shopping center with a lot of non-contiguous buildings, and the challenges of an outdoor environment were really challenging back in the day. And we have some difficult decisions coming up of how much I'm going to spend on updating that infrastructure, the front end pieces of hardware. Is that the initiative I want to keep going with, or is it super smart, right? I feel like cell towers were just ancillary income to put on the top of a building and get some money. But the right approach is totally making sure that you've got coverage throughout your shopping center to the best ability. And whether that's cellular, Wi-Fi, we've got some decisions to make.
Absolutely. The shopping center space, it was interesting. There were many that made the decision to remove social Wi-Fi just simply because anybody who used it was not the primary customer that they wanted to have data on and engage
the
with.
wrong type of dwell time, right?
There was a time where I had the police show up at one of my assets because we deployed the Wi-Fi and didn't gate what people were accessing on. Right? And so I found out, and this was an old employer, but we had people that were using it to download
Bad stuff.
I'll leave it at that. Right? So now I have to manage that Wi-Fi. So to a certain point, it's just easier to let the other infrastructure providers take care of it for you. There's a lot of companies that spend a lot of money deploying Wi-Fi that are now taking it down because it's just not worth the investment.
And the ISPs are jumping in and basically turning off your service too. So you could not be the one responsible, but they're going to hold you responsible. And then I'm stuck with architecture that has no backbone for ISPs. I'm trying to find the next option. So ISPs are cracking down hard on it too right now.
Yep. I'll put it back out to the audience if there's any other questions. One at the back, one at the front. We'll go you next, okay? You're up first.
Hey, thanks guys for a great panel here. My name's Joe Chihuahua with Robotic Imaging. Questions related around site surveys and also the relationship between the tenant and the landlord. So we're creating CAD plans mostly and doing as-built documentation for takeovers and acquisitions. Most of the times we find that's placed on the tenant that's taking over the space. How involved does the landlord get on that front end, especially like when we have a lease outline drawing that might be outdated? Do you guys touch that process at all, or that mostly fall under that tenant that's moving into the space?
Probably falls to operations if you don't have it on site. Yeah.
So we have very good vendor partners that measure those spaces for us. By the way, if you have old spaces, every single one of them that's been occupied for a long time with a long tenant, go remeasure it. Just hire one of these guys like Robotic Imaging or ID Plans to go remeasure the space for you. I just had an industrial facility remeasured. found 6,000 extra square feet, right? And I immediately started billing the tenant for it, right? So go remeasure your spaces. But yes, for us, it is automatic. As soon as a space comes vacant for us, we're getting those CAD plans, those things that you're doing, immediately built and documented. Because I want to be as frictionless as possible for the brokers and for the tenants that are negotiating. So I want the most accurate drawings you can provide me, and I'm going to make sure that when a tenant comes to negotiate with me, they're getting CAD plans, they're getting all the details on the HVAC. We don't have to go verify any of that crap. It's all in our pockets, and we give it to the tenant day one as soon as they look at our space, because it makes it much, much easier to get from start to end on a deal.
I know we had one at the back, and then we'll close with you, Jordan. Just at the back, yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time today. My name is Richard Kim. I'm with a prop tech company called Vines.ai. And sort of similar, along the similar lines of the last question, are there pain points that you're looking at in the design and construction of the new spaces, of the tenants that are turning over, or when leases get to their end, that you want to speed up in order to get to rent commencement at the store opening? And what types of pain points are those? Are they more design related? Are they construction related? Are they infrastructure related? And what sort of innovation or technology are you looking at to try to solve those problems?
Maybe I want to take a stab.
Plan review for me. As soon as someone comes out with an AI that can read construction drawings and flag them and mark them up for me, I'll be a buyer of it right away. There's a few people trying to work in this space. It's very, very difficult because it's not easy data for AI to process. It's very much a visual kind of tool. And so, but that's probably the biggest one. Is plan review takes forever. And it's just because everyone has to chime in, mark. It's like, so that would be one that we would look at. And again, in terms of AI, I would love to have a process that could manage, the whole end to end, from LOI to rent commencement, right? I'd love to have an AI tool that knows that, hey, this rent commencement deadline is passed, or this key point of the lease is passed, and you need to send the tenant a notification, have those notifications go out automatically based on what's in the lease. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to innovate in that. I haven't necessarily seen most of the AI solutions I feel like we're utilizing are almost for research purposes, is summarizing data for us to then make the decision process. I'd love an AI that can actually initiate some of the proactive communications and things like that based on information contained with the lease. That would be another big one for us.
Project management solutions, right? Yeah. Ultimately, like milestone management is a big part of it. Like you go from LOI to permit, possession permit, and then you've got the milestones perhaps for TI dispatch based on status of the construction, and then obviously you're always trying to achieve early commencement of rent, especially if you've negotiated the deal that way, because that's ancillary revenue at the end of the day. So all of those components for sure. Jordan, do you want to close it out with the last question? Is that okay? We got time for our last one? Yep.
Hey, thanks guys. Great panel. And I'm Jordan with ID Plans, and I love seeing all the prop tech guys ask questions. I think that's cool. I keep hearing ancillary income, and I'm thinking at your average shopping center, you're going to see EV charging, you may see out parcel temporary rent, you may see dozens of these things. My question to the panel, I think maybe more operational, maybe more tech too, but also marketing, is how are you managing all these programs, especially with restrictive covenants and infrastructure limitations, things like that? Do you guys have a dashboard that visualizes all these programs? And part two of the question, I think nobody cares a REIT, but with TRS is going from 20% to 25% in the new tax bill, we're going to see a lot more of these programs. So is this a challenge to manage, or have you not felt that friction yet?
I think it's a challenge to manage based somewhat on the scale of the asset, right? So small grocery anchored shopping center, that's 150,000 square feet with like a Publix and a few adjacent tenants. It's not really difficult to manage the AI, the ancillary income stuff. By the way, I always use AI for ancillary income, and it's thrown me for a lot of conversation. So from the ancillary income side of it, no, it's not difficult to manage. I would imagine on some of like your very, very large assets that an ancillary program can be extremely, time intensive in terms of what it takes to manage it. So
yeah, and for us, we've built our platform for our ancillary revenue team on Salesforce to really keep track of all our deal making, inventory, commissions, billing, et cetera, and reporting. And so that's been honestly a great move for us to really keep tabs, because before that, and still on some of the deals, we're still manually doing this in Excel. I hate to say that.
And you're talking about like licensing deals.
Yeah, licensing
primarily,
agreements, yep, specialty leasing deals, but now everything's now slowly transitioning to Salesforce.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that's organizing like the multiple lanes, if you will, because licensing deals is one, but EV revenue is another, solar revenue is another,
Right.
digital media revenue is another. If that's what you're looking for from an answer, I haven't seen anything out there. But I think with that, I'm going to conclude the panel. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your insights. We didn't quite get through the full customer journey. There's certainly the post-visit component that we had planned to talk about. But one thing that is super apparent to me is that operating retail is like no other asset class because of that dichotomy of tenant, visitor, the management of that, and all the programs that exist around it. And kudos to you guys for leading the charge with some of the innovations to put it all together. So thank you, and round of applause for the panelists.